northeast England. These will be very isolated. Overall, most places will see a dry and clear night. Despite the clear skies, temperatures in places holding up at 20 or 21 Celsius. So an uncomfortable night for sleeping and a very warm start to the weekend. We've got widespread sunny skies in the east, thicker cloud coming into the west and southwest. Always a chance of a few showers from this cloud, but these again will be very hit and miss, and they'll move generally north and northeastwards through the morning. Northern Ireland, a mix of cloud and sunny spells, not quite as warm here. We're already seeing a change coming into Northern Ireland and western Scotland, but we keep the warmth elsewhere across the UK. And as we go into the afternoon, those temperatures rising very quickly. We're talking about widely across central and eastern parts of the country, high 20s, and in some spots as high as 33, 34 Celsius. The hot spot somewhere from London up towards Yorkshire. But all that heat energy, there's a risk as fresher air comes in to the west, not quite as hot in the west, that we'll see some very lively thunderstorms later on Saturday. And the main risk area, although many places could be affected by a thunderstorm, the main risk area is North Wales, North Midlands, Northern England. We're talking about large hail, torrential rain, frequent lightning, gusty winds. They sweep through, and then fresher conditions arrive later in the weekend and into the start of next week.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good evening, this is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. The M8 eastbound has restrictions between Junction 3 and Junction 2 due to a road traffic incident. Drivers should use caution on approach. The A55 westbound from Junction 18, Llandudno Junction to Junction 17 near Conwy Morpher has a tunnel closure causing contraflow. In Warwickshire, the M40 northbound between Junction 11 and Junction 12 faces a significant road traffic collision, causing delays. Hampshire's M27 westbound experiences congestion between Junction 2 and Junction 1. And on the trains, Cross Country and East Midlands Railway are seeing major disruptions between Nottingham and Derby. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Imagine having an extra £1,000 to spend each week for an entire year. £54,321 in tax-free cash could be yours. Cash to spend however you like. £54,321 in cash could be landing in your bank account this year. For another chance to win £54,321 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Good evening, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Miriam Cates and you're watching GB News. Coming up in the next hour. Well, it's been an historic day in Parliament as MPs have voted to allow doctors to prescribe lethal drugs to end the lives of terminally ill people. Labour MP Diane Abbott warned MPs about the gravity of their decision.
This may be the most fateful bill that we discuss this Parliament. It is literally a matter of life or death.
Well, after an impassioned debate, the terminally ill adults bill passed with a majority of just 23 votes. And with many questions left to be answered about how an assisted suicide scheme would work in practice, we'll be debating what's next for the legislation as it's handed over to the House of Lords. And is the conflict in the Middle East moving closer to home? Well, last night, activists from the protest group Palestine Action broke into the RAF's Brize Norton base and sprayed red paint onto the engines of 2 Airbus Voyagers. Meanwhile, protesters have been attacked outside the Iranian embassy in London. So we'll be asking what impact the war between Israel and Iran might have in Britain. And Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner is reportedly considering plans for council tax funds collected in the south to be funneled to the north in so-called progressive redistribution of local authority funding. So is the north-south divide real? And should the south be taxed more to level up the north? We'll be debating all that before 7 p.m. And joining me for the hour of lively debate, I've got my panel, Lord Daniel Moylan, Conservative peer, and Judita De Silva, journalist and broadcaster. But first, here are your headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good evening to you. Tonight at 6, history made. That is how campaigners have reacted as MPs narrowly backed a landmark assisted dying law for England and Wales. The bill allowing terminally ill adults to end their lives with medical sign-off passed the Commons by just 23 votes.
The ayes to the right, 314. The noes to the left, 291.
Well, cheers, tears and hugs filled Westminster as supporters called it a victory for compassion.
We won!
One MP described the current law as forcing people to die in secret or die abroad. But critics warn it's a dangerous step. They say rushed through without proper safeguards and driven by emotion over evidence. The bill now heads to the House of Lords with any change unlikely before 2029. The UK has pulled staff from its embassy in Iran as a precaution amid fears the Israel-Iran conflict could escalate still further. It follows fresh Iranian strikes on Israel just this afternoon, while Israel confirmed it hit missile manufacturing sites in Tehran overnight. The UK, France and Germany have been meeting Iran's foreign minister in Geneva today in an urgent bid to de-escalate. It comes as Donald Trump is expected to decide within 2 weeks whether the United States will take any direct military action. Counter-terrorism police are now leading an investigation after activists broke into RAF Brize Norton overnight. Footage shows them riding electric scooters inside the base and spraying red paint on 2 military aircraft. The Prime Minister has called the act disgraceful. Well, our Home and Security editor Mark White has been outside the Ministry of Defence for us today with the very latest.
Well, Palestine Action say the reason they breached security at Brize Norton and damaged the aircraft is because they claim those aircraft were being used in support of the Israeli military, something officials here at the MOD have said is absolute nonsense. Now, these engines are going to have to be stripped and cleaned out. It's likely to be a costly exercise. And there's also a review of how security was breached in such a way that these activists were able to get airside and cause such damage in the first place.
The Princess of Wales has praised the life-changing work of the UK's children's hospices, calling them a lifeline for families facing the unimaginable. Catherine's message was shared just days after she pulled out of Royal Ascot as she continues to balance her return to public life following cancer treatment. Well, she is a royal patron of 2 hospices and said no parent expects to hear their child has a life-shortening condition, but that hospice care means they don't face the future alone. Her words come ahead of the end of Children's Hospice Week this weekend. And just before I hand you back to Miriam, let's take a look at these remarkable pictures coming to us out of Hawaii, where jets of lava more than 1,000 feet high have erupted from the Kilauea volcano, one of its most explosive episodes so far this year. The eruption began late last night and intensified through the hours since, with fountains you can see there lighting up the sky, triggering increased seismic activity too. A volcanic plume rose 15,000 feet into the air, carrying glass-like shards and ash that could spread downwind into the island. Lava, though, remains contained in the summit crater for now, but experts warn there are potential hazards to come. It is Kilauea's 26th lava episode since just December, making it one of the most active volcanoes in the world. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll be back with you at 7 o'clock. Now, though, it's over to Miriam.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Well, thank you for that, Sam, and welcome back to Dewbs & Co. with me, Miriam Cates. And joining me until 7 o'clock, I've got my expert panel, Judita De Silva, who is a broadcaster and commentator, and Lord Daniel Moylan, who is a Conservative life peer. And as always, please do join in the debate at home. Get your views in at gbnews.com/your say. Well, today's top story. This afternoon, MPs voted to legalise assisted suicide by a margin of 314 votes to 291. The terminally ill adults end-of-life bill now passes to the House of Lords for further scrutiny. Now, over the last few months, the legislation has been hotly debated both inside and outside of Parliament, with supporters saying that terminally ill people should have the right to choose the moment of their death. Meanwhile, opponents say that the bill does not contain enough safeguards and that vulnerable people will be coerced into taking their lives. A number of MPs who initially supported assisted dying changed their minds and voted against the bill, but the vote still passed, albeit with a reduced majority from the last vote. Well, GB News political correspondent Catherine Forster has been following the debate all day. She joins us now live from Westminster. Catherine, good evening. What was the reaction like in the Commons after the result of the vote was announced?
Well, there was absolute silence at the time of the vote, and I think really quite a sombre mood because, yes, we saw celebrations outside. Esther Rantzen is over the moon. Of course, the Prime Minister made a promise to Esther Rantzen, who's terminally ill with lung cancer, that he would make time for a debate in this Parliament. So jubilation outside. But I think MPs do realise what an incredibly momentous decision they have made today, because they have made history. It doesn't get any bigger than life or death. This is going to be the biggest change to society for many decades, and this will have to become law by 2029, no matter the state of the NHS, no matter the state of palliative care that has been built into the bill. So I was struck by something that Conservative MP Ben Spencer said, that whichever way it went, they were going to let people down. If it had gone against assisted dying, there would be people whose relatives have died in horrific circumstances. I was talking to one gentleman who told me that his wife had suffocated to death. They would have felt abandoned. But as it is, of course, there are now many, many people very worried about what it means for the most vulnerable in society. And there were various amendments put forward. I was very struck by one of them that went through with a majority of 50, that basically being a burden, if you've got a terminal diagnosis, and bear in mind you've only got to find two doctors saying that they're 51% sure that you're going to die within 6 months, being a burden can be the primary reason for somebody to seek an assisted death. Now, what does that mean for elderly people in care homes, or people that might feel that they should get out of the way to save their relatives money. There's a lot of concern about what it means for the most vulnerable in society, not just from Diane Abbott, who spoke very powerfully, the mother of the House, but people like Tom Tugendhat as well. So it will go to the Lords. Now, the Lords is a revising chamber. It's not there to block, but I suspect they will attempt to amend it. And also, because it's a private member's bill, because it's not a government bill. It wasn't in anybody's manifesto when we went to vote in 2024 in July. Nobody of the public was being asked to vote on this. It's a bit different in terms of what the Lords could do. But my goodness, an enormous day.
And Catherine, I was reading some commentary from a political commentator who was saying that this could be the new Brexit in terms of how Parliament is divided, because the voting did not divide on party lines. Plenty of Labour MPs voted against this bill. 20 Conservative MPs voted for it. Do you think it will create some sort of political discomfort within Parliament, or will this be forgotten about by next week?
I don't think this will be forgotten about at all, because it's got massive implications. They're going to have to rewrite the founding principles of the NHS. And look, the Prime Minister supported it. The majority of Labour MPs supported it. There were a very significant chunk of them opposed it. But, you know, it's very notable that Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, and Shabana Mahmood, the Justice Secretary, the people who are going to be most involved with implementing this, both voted against this, as did Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister, Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary. This is going to be an issue that the wheels will have to start to be put in motion now. And I read through the impact assessment. There is still so much that is frankly TBC. There is so much that has been undecided. They don't even know what drugs are going to be used. So much left up to the Secretary of State. This is going to be a phenomenal amount of work.
Catherine Forster, thank you so much for joining us. Catherine Forster there, who's been following the debate. Well, just to bring the panel in now, we will be talking about the principles of this later on in the show, but just to kind of stick with the politics for now. Juditha, Catherine said this has got to go through the Lords. The Lords could put down plenty of amendments. Do you think the House of Lords will try to stop this, or just introduce more safeguards?
I think it will be both, because I do think there is a lot more aversion to it, be it for the lack of safeguards, the lack of complete clarity. How will financial provisions and the actual operation model work? Is it NHS, is it private care, or a moral objection to it? So it's a tremendously uphill task. But what I think, like, for in the interest of democracy, it's a wonderful thing that has happened, because the majority has spoken. This is not so much a political problem. It has political ramifications. It's a human issue. And it's about the autonomy of the individual to decide that which they want for their lives. No matter what apprehension you might have, no matter what objection you may have, I have agency and license over myself. And to get to that end of life point, for you to be able to decide that, should it be in grave circumstances, I can choose to make it light. I could choose to lighten my load. Give me that right.
Well, we'll come back to the principle of it shortly, but just sticking with the politics, Daniel, do you think that's right, that this issue actually isn't a political issue now? The Commons have spoken, and therefore the duty of the Lords really is to get it through. Yes, to scrutinise it, but to make sure it comes back ready to go.
Well, the House of Lords has no duty to pass this bill, which is not a government bill. It's a private member's bill. And wasn't in anybody's manifesto. It's not covered by any conventions. There's no duty at all on the House of Lords to pass it. The main thing about the House of Lords is that it's slow in the way it works, because it looks at legislation very carefully. So you take some of the very major bills the government has at the moment, the Employment Rights Bill, the Planning and Infrastructure Bill. They're given, 11, 12 days in sitting days, and we only have 4 sitting days a week in committee, where they're gone through in great detail. There are no spare days between now and the summer recess, and what I've heard already is that the government whips are thinking that the second reading of this bill in the Lords, which is the first step on the process, might well not happen until September or October. Then they have to find a huge amount of government time. Why would they find government time? Why would they give up their important legislation for a private member?
For things that are in the manifesto.
For things that are in the manifesto, which they're politically committed to, and which for many Labour MPs are really important, things like employment rights, renters reform and so on. I mean, you might disagree about the stuff and the details, but they are important to a lot of Labour MPs. They're going to have to give that sort of stuff up to get this through. In time.
So there may be practical problems as well as political ones. Well, don't go anywhere, because next we are going to be digging into the philosophy, the morality, the practicality of what comes next after this significant vote. And also, is the conflict in the Middle East coming to the streets of Britain? See you shortly. Don't go away.
This is our country, and we think it's amazing. From high tea to the high street, we love it all. Even the rain, we like that too. There's nowhere else we'd rather be. That's why we're here to be the fearless champion of Britain, its voices and its values. Because we are GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Vegetarians now have a greater desire to wield power more than their meat-eating counterparts. I mean, you like a sausage, don't you, Big Ins?
I like a sausage, but I have gone off meat per se, funnily enough, as I'm getting older. I think there are, you know, it takes a lot of eating a piece of meat, if you pardon the expression.
And the older you get, the more you find that it takes a lot of meat.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I must admit, I have more of a conscience about eating meat as I get older.
Yeah.
And that's a fondness of animals brings that. And if you ever go on Instagram and you look at cows and horses and pigs,
they're wonderful
they're all
things.
affectionate and
know,
incredible.
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
And there we are, putting it into our mouths and eating it.
What do you think about the move to enforce vegetarianism on people, though? Because especially in schools and some universities, there's this trend for Meat-Free Monday, where there's this enforced absence of meat on children.
I think it's ridiculous. Let kids do what they want, to be honest with. Within reason, obviously, a healthy diet, da-da-da-da-da. But no, I think, you know, I don't eat meat, the husband eats meat. It's not an issue. Eat what you want. But I think the fact that they're trying to force this into schools, look, let kids experiment, give them a vegetarian option.
Yes,
let them
and all
see
schools do that.
Just options.
It has just become political, and also there's a lot of misinformation out there. So I know children are often told that eating meat is terrible for the environment, but importing avocados thousands of miles is also terrible for the environment.
But also, I mean, a lot of vegetarian meals, are certainly processed vegetarian meals, have got a load of salt and fat and sugar in them, so they're actually worse for you than eating a lean piece of meat.
I think the tide is turning now, because the new trend amongst young people, particularly young men, is protein. Chicken, breasts, tuna. That's the new trend, to get as much protein in them as possible. It's very difficult to do when you're vegetarian.
GB News, the People's Channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Dewbs, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Miriam Cates, and keeping me company until 7 o'clock, I've got Lord Daniel Moylan, who is a Conservative peer, and Judita De Silva, who is a journalist and broadcaster. Well, as we've just been discussing, MPs have voted in favour of the terminally ill adults bill, meaning that someone who is expected to live for 6 months or less could seek medical assistance to end their lives. Now, let's watch some of the highlights from today's debate in Parliament.
This may be the most fateful bill that we discuss this Parliament. It is literally a matter of life or death. I've heard talk today about the injustices of the current situation. What could be more unjust than to lose your life because of poorly drafted legislation?
In 2015, I voted in favour of the bill put forward by Rob Morris MP at the time. But that was before I served as Shadow Minister for Disabled People for 4 years. During that time, I spoke to hundreds of disabled people and the organisations which support them. They were, and remain, extremely fearful of assisted dying.
We believe the draft legislation is workable, safe and compassionate.
It's about choosing how to face it when death is already at the door.
I know that the value that our medical establishment places on certain lives is less than the value that it places on others. When I was given the diagnosis of my daughter's Down syndrome, the next thing that the midwife said to me after "I'm so sorry" was, "I can book you a termination within 48 hours. This is a choice that so many women make because they are ignorant of the value of disabled lives.
Over the next 18 months, David tried everything he could to stay alive. However, after an unsuccessful operation to try and remove the cancer and taking part in trials for new drugs, he slowly began to lose mobility. The last few months of his life were lived at home in a hospital bed, and the strength and resilience of his wife Jackie to take care of him day in, day out remains an inspiration to me. As David's health declined, his painkillers increased further and further. His painkillers became so strong that he could no longer speak.
But I have heard her and others say that the decision we have to make today is whether or not we are in favour of the status quo, and I respectfully disagree. Our job as legislators is to consider rigorously the proposed legislation before us, and those who propose it bear the burden of persuading us that this is the right change to make.
Because I believe in freedom of choice, especially at the end of life, should always rest with the individual. That is the individual with a terminal diagnosis who is best placed to decide when it is their time to slip away.
But this is not your average bill.
Exactly.
It fundamentally changes the relationship between state and citizen.
Yeah.
It allows the state to take the life of a citizen.
There are people who will benefit from physician-assisted suicide as implemented in this bill. But there are also people who will be harmed. Those with mental illness, those in care homes, those who feel a burden, those who are made to feel a burden, and those who are abused.
Now, Daniel, you and I are both opposed to this legislation, and we heard a selection of speeches from MPs there opposing it. But we also heard some moving speeches from MPs in favour, who used personal experience to argue that actually sometimes people are in so much agony that really this is the most compassionate solution. How do you argue with that view?
Well, we can all agree on quite a lot, actually, but one of them is that there are some very hard cases. This bill doesn't deal with hard cases. You do not have to be in agony in order to avail yourself of an NHS-funded death, early death, under this legislation. You only have to be within 6 months, according to a prognosis of death. So if that's the problem you're trying to solve, and I understand that, of course, we all understand there are some very serious and very painful cases. If that's the problem you're trying to solve, this isn't the right bill for you in the first place. But even then, there is a broader question, which is, Judith referred to autonomy. And of course, this is what proponents of the bill put so much emphasis on. Actually, it's not really about compassion for the suffering, although that is a part of it. The biggest thing for those who support the bill, and she's used her own words, is my autonomy, my choice, my agency over my body. Now, that is to say that you are allowed to put your autonomy ahead of any consequences for the rest of society, and in particular for the vulnerable and the elderly. And that's your choice. That's, if you like, is your philosophical choice. I say that I don't think your autonomy goes that far if it has those consequences for the rest of society. And we all agree that there are those consequences, because otherwise we wouldn't spend our time discussing safeguards. There wouldn't be any safeguards. You wouldn't need safeguards unless there were serious adverse consequences for large numbers of people, including the elderly. Anyway, I've said enough.
No, what do you say to that, Juditha?
I do agree that nothing is completely cut and dry, that there are going to be drawbacks and there are going to be risks because you're kind of using a one-size-fits-all situation. But it's an acknowledgement that if you're given the prognosis by a medical professional that death is coming within 6 months, you have the capacity to weigh up the pros and cons of your life situation and say, is that the way I want to go? You don't, everyone seems to be fixated on this thing that, oh, the disabled, and the whole point about it is that you have psychiatrists, you have doctors. Should you, in the point of psychiatric consultation, present answers to a doctor that indicates that this is a coercive decision you are making, they can intervene at that point.
But the Royal College of Psychiatrists are opposed to this bill. And doesn't that tell you something, that the people who are experts in judging whether somebody is of sound mind, whether if someone does have autonomy, if they oppose it and say this cannot be safe, does that not give an indication of how you can never have enough safeguards?
And they're not opposed to assisted.
Just let Judy
I completely understand being opposed to it because nobody wants to carry that burden. And I'd be very worried if they were all gung-ho about it, but it shows that they have the prudence to know that it's a very weighted decision to make because, like Diane Abbott said, it's life and death. But at the same time, there are lots of things that doctors disagree on, surgeons disagree on, but you're presented with the duty of care to take on that risk, to take on that duty. So I don't see that as an issue that they disagree with it, but if they're presented with a choice where you have to step in, I think those people who disagree with it are the best people to judge those cases because you would be even more stringent about giving permission for them to go ahead.
But I mean, Daniel, one of the things that people like Juditha are assuming is that when a doctor says you've got 6 months to live, they're pretty accurate. Well, we know that more than half don't actually get the time right. And I met somebody last week, interviewed him for this channel, Stephanus, at Brayton back from Australia, who was given a 2-week prognosis for pancreatic cancer 3 years ago, and he's still alive and living life to the full.
Yeah, the truth is that any prognosis is normally based on what mathematicians call a median, which simply means that half the people in your position die before that date and half of them don't. But that in itself doesn't tell you very much, because quite a lot live longer, and you might be one of the ones who live longer. And that happens quite frequently. So it's a very, very, look at Dame Esther. She's a proof of that. She's lived way beyond the prognosis that she was given. So there's that, but there's also the fact that this process of psychiatrists being involved and reviewing decisions, we all know that's just not going to happen. It's like the 2 doctors you need to show that you have...
Well, a psychiatrist has to sit on this panel.
It becomes a tick box exercise going through. And then you've got all sorts of other questions. I mean, would you want to be... I'm never going to be Secretary of State for Health. But would you, you might have been, would you want to be the Secretary of State for Health who has to sign off the piece of paper that says, I approve this particular combination of poisons as the ones that are going to be given...
perhaps that's why the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting...
...going to be given to people who ask to die.
No, but then are you all just saying that? Because from what I'm hearing is... I just don't want responsibility, which is what the people who are pro are arguing against, that you're not listening to the people who are saying that. I always worry about the kind of tinge of righteous indignation that comes with people talking about theories and, supposition. Have you taken care of someone end of life, or lived with someone end of life, or been in a hospital with someone end of life? I've been in the bed next to someone who killed herself because the entire week we were there, she begged that she was in pain. She cried from morning till night, and she said, I can't keep doing this, and she suffocated herself. But if you'd given her the agency, that would never have happened.
But sadly, what the evidence shows is that in jurisdiction...
She had the
And she begged, and the doctors would not help her.
And she died. This is an important point.
But she killed herself, Daniel.
But that is the point. This bill is not about suicide. Suicide is legal. People have agency to commit suicide.
No, it's a humane way of death as opposed to something so brutal.
Is involving the NHS, which looks after us and keeps us alive, and the medical profession in killing people in assisting people to die, in killing people. Now, that is a very, very different step. This is not about suicide and the right to commit suicide.
Ironically, that's the point where the only point I teeter on, that putting doctors in that compromising position where you know the entirety of your profession hinges on the preservation of life and the protection of life, and now saying there is a diktat that you are now meant to take life, and then saying the state funding and the NHS to do it. I'm in two minds about that, because I do think that starting off, it should be, if you're going to make that decision, the burden of the price should be on you. It should be a private process. And I know that there are institutions in America where they tell you how to do it, but do it on your own.
I think what concerns me most is that campaigners have said this is a safe bill, there are safeguards. But if you look at every single jurisdiction around the world where assisted suicide is now legal, every single case, the original list of people who are eligible has been expanded, expanded, expanded. In Belgium and Holland, children can have assisted suicide. In Canada, it now accounts for 1 in 20 of all deaths, and people have reportedly been killed for being poor or being lonely. You can never keep... Once you've given somebody the right to die, you cannot restrict other people from claiming that right, and that's my principal concern.
And what I say to that is that isn't that an indictment on the status quo of whichever country that is? Because if the quality of life is such that socioeconomic situations...
Suicide is catching.
We're talking about Canada and Belgium. There are countries where quality of life is really low.
I'm going on the stats you just gave and answering it directly. If the point is that a percentage is due to people being poor or people being in certain situations where they're coerced, that is a social situation that you have no power over, but it speaks to that social situation existing. But still in that situation, if that individual chooses to take their life, they have a right to that choice.
Or perhaps people aren't completely autonomous and they are open to coercion and suggestion. Anyway, we're going to leave it there because we do have some breaking news. Reports suggest that the Home Secretary will move to prescribe the Palestine Action Group in the coming weeks, effectively branding them a terrorist organisation. Well, don't go anywhere, because coming up, Nigel Farage has agreed. He, in fact, suggested that earlier this morning. Perhaps the Home Secretary's listening to them after that group broke into RAF Bryce Norton and damaged jets. Well, see you after the break.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
The hot air that we've got across the UK on Saturday extends into France and Spain, but the chance of thunderstorms in these areas as well. Also the chance of thundery showers through Greece, but the islands should escape with sunny spells, albeit with a keen breeze. Through Italy, we've got plenty of sunny skies, but the Alps will see some lively weather with showers and thunderstorms, and those showers also affecting parts of Spain. But Portugal seeing largely sunny skies and plenty of sunshine through the outlook period.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Plenty of weather to talk about this weekend. Saturday's another hot day for many, but not for all. And then comes the risk of some lively thunderstorms as fresher air arrives from the west. We've got high pressure still in control as we go into the weekend, but that's shifting east, allowing hot air to be drawn northwards across the UK. Certainly a warm night tonight, despite the clear skies. Temperatures widely holding up in the mid to high teens, and in some spots no lower than 20 or 21 Celsius. Chances of some thicker cloud and some showers coming into the southwest by dawn. Otherwise, it's a dry and warm start to the weekend. Those temperatures are soon rising, particularly through the Midlands and eastern England. That's going to be where we'll see the highest temperatures through the day. Some cloud, some low cloud hugging the coast of eastern Scotland, but it's a relatively warm start wherever you are. Now, we do have some cloud arriving into Northern Ireland, and it's in Northern Ireland, Western Scotland, parts of West Wales and the southwest where the first signs of a change are arriving. A chance of some showers coming through, but the main activity really is at the end of Saturday. Ahead of any showers, we keep the strong June sunshine at its strongest on Saturday, the summer solstice, of course, and that will allow temperatures to rise widely into the high 20s, low 30s across eastern parts of the UK. and could be as high as 34 Celsius, depending on the timing of any cloud and showers arriving from the west. It's going to feel a bit fresher in the west, but still relatively humid. And then we've got these lively thunderstorms moving through overnight. North Wales, North Midlands, Northern England could see some absolute whoppers, causing all manner of impacts. And then on Sunday, the chance of some further heavy downpours into Scotland, Northern Ireland, Western England and Wales before all that clears away, and a changeable week next week, but feeling fresher.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good evening. This is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. There is a significant incident on the M8 eastbound between junctions 3 and 2. The M4 westbound is closed between junctions 30 Cardiff Gate and 32 Corriton due to maintenance with diversions in place. Northamptonshire's M1 southbound has a lane closed between junctions 18 and 16 due to a vehicle fire. Warwickshire's M40 northbound between junctions 11 and 12 is experiencing delays with 2 lanes closed. The M27 westbound in Hampshire is congested between junctions 2 and 1. And on the trains, there is disruption between Nottingham and Derby affecting Cross Country and East Midlands Railway. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Miriam Cates, and I've still got with me in the studio my panel, Lord Daniel Moylan, Conservative peer, and Judita De Silva, journalist and broadcaster. And you've been sending in lots of your views, particularly about the assisted dying debate. Teresa says people should have a choice of what to do with their bodies and their lives. This will help people stop turning to suicide. Patrick says, when it comes to assisted suicide, I'm on the fence. I've seen people die in absolute pain and it's heartbreaking, but I'm not 100% sure. Gary says there should have been a referendum on this, let the people decide. Barbara says lots of people giving opinions on something they're clueless about. Have they seen the NHS waiting lists? Thousands of people being neglected and living in agony. Well, I think this debate is going to go on and on, especially as it goes through the House of Lords, so there'll be plenty more time to discuss it. Well, moving on now, and reports suggest that the Home Secretary will move to prescribe the Palestine Action Group in coming weeks. Of course, they were the group who broke into RAF Bryce Norton last night and damaged jet planes. So effectively, that would make the group classed a terrorist organisation, which comes as Nigel Farage called for this just this morning. So is it time to clamp down on these activists and jail protesters who break into military compounds? Well, at the same time today, anti-Iranian regime protesters were attacked outside the country's embassy in London. So are we already seeing the impact of this conflict on the streets of Britain? Daniel, let's start with you. Obviously, concerning what's happening in the Middle East, this seems to be a proper full-scale war now between Israel and Iran, possibly with the Americans joining in. But as we've seen with previous Middle East conflicts, there could be consequences here in Britain. Are you worried about the state of affairs domestically?
Yeah, well, I am. First of all, I'm worried, as I think we all must be, about the fact that an important military base like RAF Bryce Norton, people can just walk in. And it's right that the Defence Secretary just walk in and do what they want. It's right that the Defence Secretary is in a call for a review of all our military installations here and abroad as well, I suppose, I hope. I think there needs to be an inquiry into what happened. There might even need to be court-martials because this is a very, very serious breach and somebody was in charge and they should have been on top of the job and they appear not to have been. That's the first thing. The second thing is, it is very concerning that so much of our street life and our politics is now being dominated by events in countries over which we have no influence whatsoever. Let's be clear about it. We can send Keir Starmer and David Lammy, hither and yon, and they can try to do the best they can. And I'm sure they do try to do the best they can. But we really are a bit player in all of this. And the idea that we should have these problems here at home and violence in our streets and constant demonstrations and people, part of our society, Jewish people, feeling threatened and intimidated, and so on. This is very unacceptable. It has to stop.
Now, Judith, this group doesn't call itself an action group. It doesn't call itself a protest group. It calls itself a direct action group. And clearly what they did last night was criminal. But do you think the Home Secretary is right to prescribe them and call them effectively a terrorist organisation?
I think it's shooting from the hip too soon. But what I feel is just a lot of the time, based on the environment of things nowadays, and that whole social media personality, we're like, oh, everyone needs to hear me shout louder than everyone else. You're doing more harm than good. The general sentiment by the majority of the world is that what's happened to the Palestinians in Gaza is inhumane. You already have the moral high ground. Now converting the conversation to lean into a negative perception of the Palestinian cause, it's counterproductive. So I would ask them, like, what do you feel you've actually achieved by doing this to help the situation, other than clickbait? What you've done now is now getting to a point that they're going to call you a terrorist and associate that word once again to a Muslim group. That doesn't help.
Yeah.
But regarding the political situation, I think that it's very precarious. I completely agree that the UK is a bit player in this. And what effectively Netanyahu has done is force everyone's hand, because there's already an issue that is existing between America and that axis of China, North Korea and Russia. They have links with Iran. When it comes down to it, do you really think they will rally behind you or go against Iran? They will not. These are big countries with big economies. Then you have a situation where, should they call on the use of the bases in Diego Garcia or Cyprus, Iran has said, if you get involved, you're a target too. And they're not making false claims. They're not going to make empty threats. The UK is not the kind of country that can be in a situation where you're going to have a pseudo-blitzkrieg 2.0 in 2025.
No, we do not have an Iron Dome or anything like it.
Stay out of it.
But Daniel, it could be the case, though, that Iran becomes so weakened by the bombardment from Israel and potentially America that actually they don't have the power to retaliate, and potentially even the regime could fall. Would that be a good thing?
Yeah, there's some really good things could happen. It would be great if the theocracy...
But we've seen what happens when regimes fall.
There are lots of really good things that could happen. But the question is, how do you get to them? How do you get to them, and how do you get to them in a way that is, if you like, morally justifiable on the one hand and relatively safe for our population on the other? And in the meantime, why are you tolerating all this, fighting going on in your streets? And groups and activists and so on breaking into your military bases, when in fact we are not an important player in this. I don't think at this stage you could say that Iran has threatened us to the point that we should be taking warlike action against them. They may do that, but I don't think they have at the moment. Even Trump said the other day, have they killed an American? No, they haven't killed an American. So in that case, we're not going to kill them. We could, but, we could kill the Ayatollah, but we're not going to kill the Ayatollah. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But he acknowledges that, there are lines that the Iranians have not crossed. And I think that's an important consideration.
And just further to that, when you think of what President Xi Jinping said, they get 90% of the oil exports from Iran. Yeah. It's a colleague that they do not want to alienate. And also, based on what's happened with the tariffs and everything else, America is an enemy, so they're not going to be in favor of supporting you. While they're not interested in having any military participation in this, what's to say they don't start arming Iran? They helped Palestine when it was Palestine versus India, because the ammunition they got from China helped bolster their position. It's something... Sorry, Pakistan. Sorry.
Although Iran's immediate neighbours are not particularly fans of Iran either, and that's potentially why they've normalised relations with Israel, and even the Saudis let Israel shoot down Iranian missiles over their airspace of the day. So
it's not something
Iran's
I would
not
depend
so
on, because even all the US bases in Muslim countries, would they be very pro using that to kill Muslim
Well, they certainly might be at risk from militants, etc. Anyway, we'll have to leave it there because we've got to get to our next break. But coming up, the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, reportedly wants council tax rises in the south to fund the north. Do you agree? Stay with us.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Beth.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie's here.
I'm Michelle Duke, Britain's News Channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection. Tune in to GB News, anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
please bring us up to date.
Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Dewberry, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Miriam Cates, and keeping me company until 7 o'clock. I've got my panel, Lord Daniel Moylan, Conservative peer, and Judita De Silva, journalist and broadcaster. And the Dewberry Tavern is officially open. Cheers, everybody. Hope you're enjoying your cold pints on this beautiful summer weather. We're in a basement, but I'm sure it's still sunny outside. Well, council tax bills are set to rise in parts of southern England to fund northern cities under Labour's new plans. Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner will set out plans for this progressive redistribution of local authority funding designed to ensure more Whitehall money goes to areas with the highest needs. While she says that the plans are aimed at fairness, council leaders in southern areas are warning that the changes could be divisive. So, should the south pay for the north? Well, we've already got some of your views on this. Anti-Woke says, this question of council tax making the south pay more to help the north, I just looked up the highest council tax in London multi-million pound houses is only £2,489 a year, and a semi-detached in Blackburn, £2,240 for a house worth £150,000. How can that be justified? This is a real point, isn't it, Judita? Some very expensive houses in the south are paying less council tax than much cheaper houses in the north.
100% that there are discrepancies, there are imbalances, and those need to be addressed. But I think packaging it in a sense that whatever decision is made, the knock-on effect is that for councils that need more money, the shortfall would be borne by the council taxpayers. So it's going to be from people. We're going to end up bearing the cost. So that whole sentiment of I'm now paying more money for this principle of bolstering the disenfranchised, you're creating a social divide that need not be there. There's so many fraction lines socially, socioeconomically currently in the country. Packaging this reform as help the north at the expense of the south, it's just really bad marketing. But I get the principle of it because there is a problem where when you look across the county, councils, the math just doesn't seem to be working out the way it ought to be.
That's right, isn't it, Daniel? Because in some of these northern towns, I mean, I grew up in Sheffield, they were deindustrialised in the 70s and 80s, and even more recently. They are much poorer, they have much higher needs, and therefore the people who live there have to pay higher council tax in order to fulfil those needs. That's not fair, is it?
Yeah, but the rate support grant has always taken account of those differences. So what Angela Rayner's doing, and Labour always do this, is to say, I've got this formula, it's a complicated formula, but it has the tendency of giving more money to places with less resource and poorer people. That's what it does. And I've got this formula, but I can supercharge it. I can get more money if I tweak this bit and change this part of the formula, and I can quite deliberately do it to get more money going to the places where I want to keep the votes. That's what it's about. And it's being announced now, 2 weeks or so before the Labour MPs vote on the welfare cuts, so that she can say, look, backbench MPs. I mean, all of this is about managing...
You're very cynical.
All of this.
You're so cynical.
All of this is about managing... You've got this huge majority, and they spend all their time worrying about their backbench Labour MPs. I just don't understand it. But there we are. It's all about managing them. So, yeah, we're gonna fiddle the council tax, and the rich will, will squeeze them till the pipsqueak and so on, and there'll be money coming in your direction. Do vote for welfare.
But I do...
It's so cynical.
I do agree that...
isn't mine. By the way.
The Labour government, I have to say, needs to do stuff that looks more Labour, because it hasn't looked good thus far. So something that is seen to be pro those who have less, I'm for it. But again, this is a problem that exists. The way you're going about it, I agree, is that you're fiddling a system that need not be tweaked in this way. But it's something that does need to be addressed, and they are doing it at a time where you need to kind of get more support and change the optics and change the rhetoric. But is it a bad thing? No, it's not.
Do you think council tax is the best vehicle, though? Because it's a deeply unfair tax, because you essentially pay based on what your house was worth in the 1990s, which has no relation.
That's not entirely true. No, I think that's the wrong way of thinking. All right, it's the wrong way of thinking about it. You basically, council tax is not a tax on houses. It's not a tax on property. The council tax is a tax to pay for local services, and it's moderated to a degree so that people who have less wealth pay less.
But it's not.
It is to some extent.
It is how much
in a particular area.
I'll give you a perfect example. We have just moved from north to south, so we have been punished by the greater value of houses. But for our smaller, less valuable house in the north, we were paying far more council tax than we're about to pay for the bigger, more expensive house we're about to move into in the south.
Do you think that might be something to do?
No, it's because our first house was a new build, and therefore was valued at current value, and the house we're moving into is ancient and therefore valued in the 90s.
Well, I didn't know
unfairness.
I didn't know it worked that way, and that's a wrinkle in the system.
I mean, I'm not complaining right now, but it is. But obviously, it's not clever.
I can see for the new build it doesn't help, but the system is unfair and it is very peculiar. That's absolutely true. But it isn't actually intended to be a tax on wealth. It's intended to be a charge for local services. And all I'd say is Labour always does this. They did it under Blair and Brown and so on. Brown was constantly fiddling these formulae to send money in different directions. He couldn't help himself. And now Angela's, got the bug. But the real thing, as I say, is this is to prepare the ground for welfare cuts. What Sir Keir giveth with one hand, he taketh away. He taketh away with the other within 10 days.
Money needs to
not be taken in.
Money needs to be found, and you're going to have to scrape a little from everywhere, and it's going to cause a degree of hurt to certain people in every faction.
Well,
to find that money.
One thing that is hurting people in the south is the cost of pints, and I was looking this up earlier, and the average cost of a pint in London is £6.75.
That's shocking.
In Blackpool, it's £2.50. Now, this doesn't affect you with your lemonade eater, but Daniel, what do you think about this unfairness?
I think this is absolutely incomprehensible, actually, because, we have a single market, so to speak, across Britain. And you'd have thought that free market forces would encourage those brilliant entrepreneurs in Blackburn with the cheap beer to ship it down to London and undercut the London prices.
Idea. Do you think it
How
matters?
sacred is beer? Drink Sprite like me.
It's your money-saving tip from Julie to Silver. I mean, I have to say, being a northerner and coming to London and seeing the prices of drinks is astonishing. I mean, it doesn't
Well, you
depend
see,
where
the prices are higher here, and that may be why we should have lower council tax.
Well, there you go, to compensate. Well, thank you so much to my panel for joining. We've had some very serious debate, obviously, on the assisted dying bill, which I'm sure is going to run and run, but also hopefully some more light-hearted chat for your Friday night. Well, coming up next is Lee Anderson. I'll be back tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock for Saturday Morning Live, so do join me then. But hopefully you'll enjoy your very sunny evening and enjoy Lee next. But first of all, here is your weather forecast.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. It's a sunny and hot day widely across the country. Some patchy cloud, not entirely blue skies, and that patchy cloud giving the odd thundery downpour. We've seen 1 or 2 drops of rain across southwestern parts earlier on. They are tending to move north-eastwards as high pressure drifts to the east and extends hot air nationwide, and so it's not just the south where we'll see the warm sunshine during the rest of Friday. It's across much of the UK. Cloudier skies for the Northern Isles, far northwest of Scotland, but otherwise it's simply sunny skies across the board, and with that very strong June sunshine, temperatures reaching the mid to high 20s across northern Scotland through to Northern Ireland, much of England and Wales, and in some spots 30 or 31 Celsius. Now, for 1 or 2 areas, there's the likelihood of a thundery shower or two, particularly through the Grampians as we end the afternoon and go into the evening, or perhaps through northeast England. But these will be very isolated. For the vast majority, it's a dry and bright end to the day. And look at the temperatures. This is at 6 p.m, 29 Celsius still there for Birmingham. Widely the mid to high 20s clinging on into the evening. And even after the sun goes down, despite the clear skies, we're going to see that warm air stay with us, and as a result it's going to be an uncomfortable night for sleeping. Some patchy cloud here and there, and again a few showers potentially